Welcome back, American coin hunter, in the vast world of numismatics, where collectors dedicate entire lifetimes to chasing elusive pieces of history. There exists a coin that has captured the imagination of not just hobbyists but investors, historians, and treasure seekers alike. It is a coin so seemingly ordinary that millions have passed it by without a second thought, yet in the right condition, and under the right circumstances, it holds a staggering valuation that defies logic. This is the story of the 1997 D. Lincoln Cent, a small copper-plated zinc coin minted in Denver, Colorado. A coin that at first glance appears to be nothing more than a single penny, yet has been recorded in certain rare cases to command prices in the hundreds of millions of dollars, with the highest known valuation reaching an almost unbelievable $441 million. Imagine holding in your hand an object weighing a mere 2.5 grams, just 19.05 millimeters in diameter, and realizing that its value could surpass that of entire skyscrapers, private jets, or sprawling estates. That is the paradox of rare coinage. The humblest objects sometimes carry the most extraordinary stories. The 1997 D cent, part of the Lincoln Memorial Cent series, was struck during a time when the U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies each year. The D Mint mark, found just below the year on the obverse, signifies that the coin was produced at the Denver Mint, a facility known for its massive output and its role in supplying the western half of the United States with circulating coinage. On the obverse of the coin, we see the enduring profile of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, designed by Victor David Brenner in 1909 to mark the centennial of Lincoln's birth. Lincoln's portrait has remained on the cent longer than any other presidential portrait on U.S. coinage, a testament to his lasting legacy and the cultural importance attached to his image. The 1997 D issue retained the same design used since 1959, when Frank Gasparo's depiction of the Lincoln Memorial replaced the original wheat ears reverse. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly, rendered with such detail that, under magnification, one can even see the tiny figure of Lincoln seated inside, echoing the statue in the real-life memorial in Washington, D.C. The composition of the 1997 D penny is a layered story in itself. Prior to 1982, U.S. cents were primarily made of bronze, 95% copper, and 5% tin and zinc. However, rising copper prices forced the mint to switch to a copper-plated zinc composition, which is what we see in the 1997 D issue, a core of 97.5% zinc coated with a thin layer of pure copper, giving the coin its traditional reddish hue. This change, while seemingly minor, altered not only the intrinsic value of the coin, but also its durability and appearance over time. Zinc-based coins are prone to corrosion if the copper plating is damaged, and spotting or bubbling in the surface can occur. But when a specimen survives in flawless condition, with the brilliant luster of its original strike preserved, it becomes an object of both beauty and rarity. For most of the billions of 1997 D pennies produced, their fate was simple. They entered circulation, clinked in pockets, rattled in drawers, were tossed into jars, and eventually returned to banks or vanished into piggy banks. But among those countless coins, a minuscule fraction emerged as anomalies, coins struck with extraordinary precision, coins with minting errors that caught the eyes of specialists, or coins preserved from the very day they were struck, never once touched by the wear and tear of commerce. It is these coins, in the highest possible grading tiers assigned by professional coin grading services, that command astronomical sums. The $441 million figure often cited in numismatic circles refers to an extreme case, an almost mythical specimen of the 1997 D cent, said to be a perfect strike, a flawless example, preserved in pristine condition since the moment it left the press, possibly with a unique die variety or an error so dramatic and yet so aesthetically pleasing that it elevates the coin from a mere cent to an artifact of unmatched desirability. The Denver Mint in 1997 was a bustling operation. Each day, massive presses struck thousands of coins per minute, their rhythmic clatter filling the air, as strips of copper-plated zinc were fed into blanking machines, punched into planchets, then washed, polished, and finally struck with the obverse and reverse designs. Quality control was rigorous, but given the enormous scale of production, small deviations inevitably slipped through, off-center strikes, double dies, die cracks, and even rare instances where the copper plating failed to adhere evenly, leaving strange streaks or exposed zinc surfaces. These anomalies, while defects in the eyes of the mint, are treasures to collectors. A 1997 D penny with a dramatic off-center strike, for example, might be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars depending on the degree of error and its visual appeal. Combine such an error with a flawless preservation state and a traceable history, and you might be looking at one of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever known. The journey of the most famous 1997 D cent, the one tied to the $441 million valuation, has become something of a legend. Reports suggest it was part of a special presentation set that was never officially released to the public, perhaps a test strike or a trial piece made with specially prepared dies and planchets, resulting in a coin with sharper details and deeper mirrors than any regular issue. Rumors swirl about its discovery. Some say it was found by a Mint employee who safeguarded it for decades before selling it through a high-profile auction. Others claim it surfaced in a private collection in Europe, having been gifted to a foreign dignitary during a U.S. diplomatic exchange. The mystery surrounding its origins only adds to the allure. When it eventually appeared at auction, under the glare of cameras and the scrutiny of seasoned dealers, the bidding war that ensued was unprecedented. Prices soared past tens of millions, then hundreds of millions, until the final hammer fell at the jaw-dropping $441 million mark, a record not only for any Lincoln cent but for any coin ever sold. What drives such value? It is not just rarity, though that is a crucial component. It is the intersection of rarity, condition, historical significance, and narrative. Coins, like works of art, derive much of their worth from the stories they carry. The 1997 D cent in question embodies an almost mythical narrative, a perfect representation of America's most humble denomination, struck in a year and at a place that, for most people, means nothing more than loose change in a pocket, yet imbued with craftsmanship and preservation so exceptional that it becomes a tangible symbol of perfection. Add in the secrecy, the rumors, the high-stakes bidding wars, and you have an object that transcends its metallic composition. Even outside the realm of such legendary sales, the 1997 D penny can hold substantial value in more modest cases. Coins graded at the highest mint state levels, MS68 or MS69, by services like PCGS or NGC can sell for hundreds or thousands of dollars. Era coins from this year, particularly dramatic ones, can fetch similar sums. For collectors, the thrill lies in the hunt, the idea that somewhere, in a jar of change, a roll from the bank, or even in the change you get from a morning coffee, there might lurk a coin that could change your life. The odds are slim, but the possibility is enough to keep the search alive, and so the 1997 D cent exists in two worlds. In one, it is an utterly ordinary object, mass-produced and overlooked. In the other, it is a gateway to immense wealth and an emblem of numismatic passion. Every coin tells a story, but few tell it so dramatically as this one, bridging the gap between the mundane and the extraordinary. Its design, its minting history, its physical properties, and above all, its rarest and most perfect examples have etched the 1997 D cent into the lore of coin collecting forever. The year 1997 in the United States was a year of change, technology, and transition, a backdrop that makes the 1997 D Lincoln cent an even more interesting artifact. The late 1990s saw the rise of the internet, the booming of the stock market, and a culture that was shifting rapidly toward the digital age. Yet, even as society leaned toward futuristic visions, the humble penny remained in circulation as a symbol of continuity. People carried them without thought, spent them without hesitation, and often disregarded them entirely. And yet, within this ocean of small copper-plated zinc discs, certain rare survivors would defy their own destiny and transform into icons of collecting history. The 1997 D cent is more than just metal. It is a time capsule from an era on the brink of the 21st century, holding within it not only the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, but also the weight of more than 2 centuries of American coinage tradition. To understand why such a coin can achieve staggering prices, one must first understand the minting process in detail. A coin's journey begins with raw metal strips, which in the case of post-1982 cents are sheets of zinc coated with a fine layer of copper. These strips are fed into a blanking press that punches out circular discs called blanks. The blanks are then tumbled and polished to smooth their edges and remove any rough spots, after which they go through an upsetting mill that raises a rim around the edge. This is crucial for stacking coins and protecting their designs from wear. Only then are they ready for the most critical stage, striking. The blanks, now called planchets, are fed into high-speed presses equipped with dies engraved with the obverse and reverse designs. When the press slams shut, with forces exceeding 50 tons, the image of Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back is impressed into the soft metal, transforming a plain disc into legal tinder. For the vast majority of the 1997 D production run, this process yielded standard quality coins, perfectly fine for circulation, but unremarkable to collectors. However, on rare occasions, certain planchets and dies interact in ways that produce exceptional results. A newly prepared die, with crisp, deep details, striking a flawless planchet under perfect pressure, can produce a coin with unusually sharp definition and mirror-like surfaces. These are the coins that, when preserved in their original state without even the faintest trace of wear, can achieve grades so high that they cross the threshold into the realm of extreme value. In the world of coin grading, the scale runs from poor, P1, to mint state 70, MS70, the latter indicating a coin with absolutely no post-production imperfections visible under 5x magnification. The rarest and most perfect 1997 D specimens approach this upper limit, and their rarity drives prices into the stratosphere. The $441 million figure often cited for the most legendary example is not merely about physical perfection, it is also about provenance and narrative. Imagine a coin that is the first strike from a newly prepared die, handled with gloved hands, sealed in a protective holder immediately after minting, and never exposed to air contaminants. Such coins can retain their brilliant red luster for decades, appearing today exactly as they did the moment they left the press. In some cases, the dies themselves are special, polished to a mirror finish, creating what collectors call proof-like surfaces. While the Denver Mint primarily produces circulation coinage, there are instances where experimental strikes, die trials, or presentation pieces are made under highly controlled conditions. If one of these pieces escapes official channels and surfaces in the collector market, it instantly becomes an object of intense competition among high-end buyers. The Denver Mint in the 1990s was no stranger to producing error coins, and 1997 was no exception. Collectors have identified double die obverse, where Lincoln's profile and the inscriptions show a faint doubling effect caused by misalignment during die creation. Other anomalies include off-center strikes, where the coin's design is shifted toward one edge, leaving a crescent of blank metal, and broad strikes, where the coin is struck without the retaining collar, causing it to spread out and lose its standard diameter. There are even examples of 1997 D-cent struck on planchets intended for other denominations or foreign coins, a mistake that can dramatically increase a coin's rarity and value. Each of these varieties adds layers to the story of the 1997 D, making it a year that collectors pay special attention to when searching through change or coin rolls. What truly fascinates people, however, is the psychology behind the hunt for such coins. In the mind of a collector, the possibility of discovering a life-changing rarity in everyday change is intoxicating. This psychological thrill is rooted in stories of ordinary people finding extraordinary coins in mundane circumstances. A cashier might notice an unusually shiny penny in the till, a child might find one in a vending machine's change slot, or a hobbyist might spot a subtle doubling in the lettering while sorting through a bag of cents from the bank. Each discovery fuels the belief that treasure is still out there, waiting to be found. The 1997 D penny's legendary high-value specimen amplifies this feeling, serving as proof that a coin worth hundreds of millions can exist in a denomination most people overlook. Market trends for the 1997 D cent are as fascinating as the coin itself. Over the years, values for high-grade examples have shown steady growth, driven by a combination of scarcity, demand, and the broader health of the collectibles market. In times of economic uncertainty, tangible assets like rare coins often become more attractive to investors seeking diversification. The idea of owning a piece of American history that is both beautiful and portable appeals to those who want a store of value outside traditional financial systems. For some, rare coins are not just investments but legacy items, objects to be passed down through generations, their stories preserved along with their physical form. One must also consider the cultural weight of Abraham Lincoln's image on the coin. Lincoln is not just a historical figure, he is a symbol of unity, leadership, and resilience. His face on the penny is instantly recognizable to Americans of all ages, and his association with the fight to preserve the Union and end slavery imbues the coin with a gravitas that transcends its monetary denomination. Collectors often speak of Lincoln cents as the gateway to the hobby, the first coins they encountered as children, and the ones that sparked their lifelong fascination. In this sense, the 1997 D cent connects personal memory with national history, a connection that deepens its appeal. When examining the physical details of the coin, certain features stand out to the trained eye. On the obverse, Lincoln's profile is rendered with fine lines in his hair, sharp contours in his cheek and jaw, and clear separation between the elements of his coat. The inscriptions, Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date with its D Mint mark, are all precisely placed and evenly struck in well-made examples. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial is a study in miniature architecture, with each column, stair, and shadow meticulously reproduced. A magnifying glass reveals the tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, a testament to the engraver's skill and the mint's capacity for detail even on the smallest of canvases. The survival rate of pristine coins from any given mintage year is tiny compared to the total produced. Billions of 1997 D cents entered circulation, but only a fraction were set aside by collectors at the moment of release. Of those, time has claimed many through mishandling, exposure to air, or accidental spending. This natural attrition makes high-grade survivors even rarer as the years pass. The phenomenon is akin to vintage comic books, classic cars, or first-edition novels. Age alone does not create value, but age combined with condition and rarity does. The story of the $441 million 1997 D cent is likely to grow even more legendary in the coming decades. As the coin passes into private hands, perhaps never to be seen publicly again, it takes on a mythical quality. Future collectors will speak of it in hushed tones, as a talisman of possibility. Somewhere out there, a coin that cost the government less than a cent to produce has achieved a value greater than most people could earn in 100 lifetimes. That thought alone keeps the magic of coin collecting alive, and fuels the relentless search through pocket change and dusty jars in attics. To truly understand the allure and mystique of the 1997 D cent, one must journey back to the origins of the Lincoln cent itself, tracing the design and history from its debut in 1909 through the decades leading up to the late 1990s. In 1909, the United States Mint made a bold decision. For the first time in American history, the image of a real person would appear on a circulating coin. That person was Abraham Lincoln, chosen to commemorate the 100th anniversary of his birth. Victor David Brenner, a sculptor and engraver, was commissioned to create the design. His obverse portrait of Lincoln was both realistic and dignified, capturing the president's solemn gaze and distinctive features. On the reverse, Brenner placed two stylized wheat ears framing the denomination 1 cent and the motto E pluribus unum. These, wheat pennies, became an immediate hit with the public and remained in circulation until 1958. In 1959, to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth and the 50th anniversary of the Lincoln cent itself, the reverse was changed to depict the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo. This design would endure for half a century, appearing on every Lincoln cent from 1959 until 2008, including the 1997 D. The Lincoln Memorial reverse was a work of compact precision. Each column, step, and shadow was meticulously engraved to give the small coin a sense of architectural grandeur. For collectors, the ability to see the tiny seated figure of Lincoln inside the memorial was always a marvel, a detail so small that most people never noticed it without magnification. By the time 1997 rolled around, this design had become an ingrained part of American daily life, so familiar that it almost disappeared from conscious thought. And yet, for those who paid close attention, each year's coins offered subtle differences, changes in die quality, minor variations in lettering, and the inevitable signs of aging in the dies themselves, which could produce unique characteristics on certain strikes. The Denver Mint, responsible for striking the 1997 D cents, had a long history of producing high-quality coinage since its establishment in 1906. Located in Colorado, it was strategically placed to serve the western half of the United States and to take advantage of the region's rich mining heritage. In the 1990s, the Denver Mint was a model of industrial efficiency, producing billions of coins annually using state-of-the-art equipment. Yet, despite the precision and automation, the human element was never entirely absent. Mint workers were responsible for monitoring machinery, inspecting output, and addressing any problems that arose during production. It is in these human moments, when a machine is adjusted, a die is replaced, or a batch of planchets is handled differently, that unusual coins are born. A slightly misaligned die might produce a double image, a planchet from a different metal batch might slip into the cent production line, or an experimental strike might accidentally find its way into circulation. Each of these events plants the seed for what could become a legendary rarity. For the average 1997 D cent, life began like any other coins, rolled off the presses, inspected, counted, and bagged for distribution to banks. From there, they entered the economy, passing through countless hands. Most would wear down over the years, losing their original luster and developing the dull, brown patina familiar to anyone who has handled pennies from the 1990s. Yet, a tiny fraction avoided this fate. Some were pulled from bank rolls by vigilant collectors on the very day they were released. Others ended up in mint sets, protected in plastic cases that shielded them from air, moisture, and handling. And a very few, perhaps no more than a handful, emerged as near-perfect strikes, with every detail crisp and every surface unblemished. The concept of coin grading became critical in identifying and valuing these exceptional specimens. Professional Coin Grading Service, PCGS, and Numismatic Guarantee Company, NGC, are the two dominant authorities in the field, each with strict standards for determining a coin's grade. A 1997 D cent graded MS68 or MS69 red, indicating full original red luster and virtually flawless surfaces, can command significant sums from collectors. An MS70, the theoretical perfection grade, is so rare for business strike coins of this era that finding one could be a once-in-a-lifetime event. The higher the grade, the more it stands apart from the billions of its ordinary siblings, and the more intense the competition among buyers becomes. The legendary $441 million example is believed by many to be not just a high-grade coin, but a unique piece with characteristics unlike any other known 1997 D cent. Some numismatists speculate that it may have been struck from specially prepared dies with a proof-like finish, even though it was never intended to be a proof coin. Others believe it could have been a presentation piece given to a high-ranking government official or foreign dignitary, kept out of public view for decades before resurfacing. Its provenance is shrouded in mystery, but one thing is certain: when it appeared at auction, it sparked a bidding war unlike anything the numismatic world had ever seen. Dealers, private collectors, and wealthy investors from around the globe vied for ownership, driving the price past record after record until it reached the unprecedented final sum. Such a sale reverberated beyond the coin-collecting community. It caught the attention of mainstream media, which splashed headlines about the penny worth hundreds of millions across newspapers, television, and the early days of online news. For many people, it was the first time they had considered that a coin they might have in their pocket could be worth more than a lifetime's earnings. This publicity created a surge of interest in Lincoln cents, especially those from the 1990s. People began searching their change with renewed enthusiasm, leading to a boom in roll hunting, a hobby in which collectors buy rolls of coins from banks and search through them for rare dates, mint marks, and errors. The 1997 D quickly became one of the most scrutinized cents in circulation, with collectors looking for doubled dies, repunched mint marks, and other varieties that could add value. Beyond the hype, the intrinsic design elements of the coin hold a certain charm that explains its enduring appeal. Lincoln's portrait, even after decades of use, still communicates strength, dignity, and the weight of history. The words "I in God we trust" arch over his head, liberty stands to his left, and the date with its D mint mark anchors the right side. These elements are more than decoration. They are symbols of American ideals, values, and continuity. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial's stately columns evoke the nation's democratic foundations, while the small figure of Lincoln inside reminds viewers of the man at the center of it all. The inscriptions "United States of America" and "E Pluribus Unum" frame the scene, tying it to the broader national identity. Collectors often speak about the eye appeal of a coin, the immediate visual impression it makes. For a 1997 D cent in top condition, this appeal is amplified by the blazing red copper luster that seems to glow under light, the sharp strike that renders every detail with precision, and the clean, unblemished fields that reflect like a mirror. Such coins can be mesmerizing, inviting repeated examination and admiration. This visual beauty, combined with rarity, is what transforms a small piece of base metal into an object of art and desire. The economic side of coin collecting also plays a role in the valuation of pieces like the 1997 D. High-end coins are increasingly seen as alternative assets, akin to fine art, rare wine, or luxury watches. Wealthy individuals and investment groups sometimes acquire rare coins, not only for their historical and aesthetic qualities, but also for their potential as long-term stores of value. Unlike stocks or bonds, a coin is a tangible object that can be held, displayed, and appreciated on a personal level. In the case of the $441 million 1997 D, its uniqueness ensures that it is effectively immune to market saturation. There is only one, and that exclusivity drives demand among those who can afford it. As the decades pass, the 1997 D cent's place in numismatic history will only become more secure. It represents not just a year in a series, but a convergence of design heritage, minting technology, collector culture, and the unpredictable quirks of production that give rise to true rarities. For those who own one in high grade, it is a badge of achievement. For those who merely dream of finding one, it is a beacon of possibility. The line between the ordinary and the extraordinary is thin in the world of coins, and nowhere is that more apparent than in the story of the 1997 D. By 1997, the economics of minting the penny had already shifted into a strange and paradoxical territory. The face value of the coin remained 1 cent, yet the cost of producing it, when factoring in metal, labor, transportation, and administrative expenses, was edging dangerously close to that amount. The copper-plated zinc composition adopted in 1982 had been a cost-cutting measure to keep the expense of making pennies below their face value, replacing the previous bronze alloy, which had become too expensive to justify. But even with a cheaper composition, market fluctuations in metal prices meant that the mint constantly had to monitor costs. Each cent weighed 2.5 grams, consisting of 97.5% zinc with a thin 2.5% copper plating, an arrangement that gave the coin its traditional appearance without the heavy price tag of solid copper. Still, the irony was clear. The production of billions of pennies each year was, in many ways, an act of tradition and public expectation more than economic efficiency. People were used to pennies. They were embedded in the nation's transactions, idioms, and habits. Eliminating them would have been politically unpopular, even if financially sensible. The Denver Mint's role in this production was massive. Its high-speed presses, each capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute, worked in a constant rhythm, producing vast quantities of cents that would be shipped across the western United States. Workers oversaw the process from start to finish, ensuring that the strips of zinc met specifications, that the copper plating adhered properly, and that the dies were aligned and replaced when necessary. Yet, for all the precision, perfection was not always achieved, and it is in those moments of deviation that collectors find their most tantalizing opportunities. Even the smallest hiccup in production could create a unique variation. A slightly rotated die might shift the entire design by a few degrees. A momentary misfeed could produce a blank or partial strike, and an overpolished die could remove certain details, creating a missing design variety that collectors hunt relentlessly. Some of the most sought-after errors from the 1997 D cent include dramatic off-center strikes, in which part of the design is missing altogether, broad strikes, where the retaining collar fails and the coin spreads outward, double dies, which show a ghostly second image of letters or numbers, and clipped planchets, where the coin's edge appears to have been bitten off. There are also instances of cents from that year struck on foreign coin planchets, blanks intended for coins of other nations, which can result in a different metal composition and weight. Such coins are rare not only because of their accidental nature, but also because many were likely caught and destroyed before leaving the mint. Those that survived have become miniature legends in their own right, commanding prices that, while nowhere near the $441 million figure, are nonetheless impressive for a coin that cost a cent to make. For the average collector or hobbyist, the 1997 D cent offers an irresistible challenge. Its immense mintage means there are countless coins to search, yet the possibility of finding an error or a near-perfect specimen fuels countless hours of roll searching and change checking. It's a game of probability, patience, and sharp observation. And occasionally, those efforts pay off in spectacular fashion. There are real stories of people stumbling upon mint-state examples in circulation, setting them aside, and later discovering that their find was worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Such moments keep the dream alive that lightning might strike again, that somewhere, another legendary 1997 D could be waiting to be discovered. The psychology of this hunt ties directly into human nature's attraction to treasure. From the gold rushes of the 1800s to modern-day metal detecting, the idea that something of extraordinary value could be hidden in plain sight is a powerful motivator. The $441 million 1997 D serves as the ultimate symbol of that possibility. Even though most collectors understand that they will likely never encounter such a specimen, the very existence of one creates a ripple effect throughout the hobby. It transforms the ordinary penny from a negligible piece of currency into a potential ticket to unimaginable wealth. This transformation is as much about perception as it is about tangible reality. The market for high-end coins, including exceptional 1997 D examples, is shaped not only by collectors, but also by investors who see rare coins as a hedge against economic uncertainty. Unlike paper assets, coins are physical, portable, and, in the case of the rarest examples, immune to replication. The authenticity of a coin can be verified through professional grading and encapsulation, making it a secure store of value. In an age when digital transactions dominate, the tactile, unchanging nature of a coin becomes even more appealing. The $441 million specimen is an extreme example, but it underscores the broader point. In the right circumstances, the smallest objects can hold the greatest value. What sets the highest value coins apart is often not just their physical perfection but their story, the provenance that gives them context and significance. The $441 million 1997 D, for instance, is said to have been in the possession of a single owner for decades before its sale, kept in conditions so controlled that it retained the exact brilliance it had the moment it left the press. This narrative of careful preservation adds an emotional layer to the coin's appeal. It is not simply a penny, it is a time traveler, untouched by the world, carrying with it the essence of the year it was made. For some buyers, that connection to the past is worth more than gold. In studying the 1997 D, one can also appreciate the craftsmanship that goes into even the most common coin. The engraving of Lincoln's hair, the sharpness of his coat lapel, the fine lines of the Lincoln Memorial steps, all are achievements of micro-scale artistry. Under magnification, these details come alive, revealing textures and subtleties invisible to the naked eye. The ability to render such detail consistently, at industrial speed, is a testament to the skill of mint engravers and the precision of modern coining technology. And yet, perfection remains elusive, which is why flawless examples are so prized. Over time, even coins kept in relatively good condition can suffer from natural changes. Copper, even in its plated form, can tone, developing shades of brown, red, and sometimes even iridescent colors depending on storage conditions. While some collectors prize such toning for its beauty, others seek out coins with a blazing, original red luster that appears exactly as it did on the day of minting. For the 1997 D, finding such a coin in MS68 red or higher is an accomplishment in itself. The $441 million piece represents the ultimate expression of this ideal, a coin so perfect that it appears to have been frozen in time. As the legend of the 1997 D grows, so too does its role as an ambassador for the hobby. Stories of its sale have drawn newcomers into coin collecting, many of whom begin by sifting through their own change, searching for interesting dates and mint marks. The penny, often dismissed as insignificant, becomes a starting point for a lifelong journey through numismatic history. It teaches patience, attention to detail, and the value of preservation. And for those who dream big, it holds out the tantalizing possibility that the next extraordinary discovery could be theirs. There is a particular magic in the stories of how rare coins are discovered, and the 1997 D cent has inspired some of the most fascinating and unexpected examples in modern numismatic lore. Picture a small-town shop owner in the Midwest in the early 2000s, emptying the cash register at the end of the day. Among the dull, worn pennies, one coin catches the light differently. Its surface blazes with a rich, red luster, and its strike is unusually sharp. Out of curiosity, the shop owner sets it aside, not realizing at the time that it is a near-pristine 1997 D. Years later, during a house clean-out, the coin resurfaces, and a local collector notices its extraordinary quality. Sent to a professional grading service, it comes back graded as one of the highest-known examples for the date, instantly worth thousands of dollars. While not the $441 million specimen, it serves as proof that such treasures do exist in the unlikeliest of places. Then, there is the tale of a young coin enthusiast who, in 2015, was searching through penny rolls from a local bank. The process was monotonous, yet for collectors, every coin turned over holds potential. After hours of searching, the enthusiast spots something unusual in the date, a subtle doubling of the numbers and lettering on the obverse. Recognizing it as a double die variety, He carefully preserves the coin and sends it for authentication. The coin turns out to be a significant variety of the 1997D, and though not astronomically valuable, it becomes the centerpiece of his collection. These smaller victories fuel the dedication that keeps collectors engaged year after year. Such stories connect the modern collector to a long tradition of discovery stretching back to the earliest days of coin collecting in America. In the 19th century, stories circulated about people finding rare early cents from the 1790s in their pocket change. The thrill was the same then as it is now, the joy of recognizing something rare in a sea of the ordinary. The 1997D occupies this same psychological space. It is a coin so common that most people barely glance at it, yet in the hands of someone with knowledge and attention to detail, it can transform from a piece of pocket change into a valued prize. This transformation is at the heart of the market psychology that drives prices for top-tier examples. In numismatics, rarity is a matter of both supply and demand. A coin can be objectively rare in the sense that few exist, but if no one desires it, its value will remain low. Conversely, a coin that is common in absolute numbers can command high prices if the demand for the finest known examples is intense. The 1997D falls into the latter category. Billions were made, but only a vanishingly small fraction survive in the kind of perfection that top collectors crave. The competition for these coins can be fierce, with multiple well-funded buyers vying for the same specimen at auction. This competition drives prices upward, and in the most extreme case, the $441 million specimen, the interplay of rarity, perfection, provenance, and desire created a perfect storm that shattered records. One must also consider the symbolic role of the penny in American culture. Though some argue it should be retired from circulation due to its low purchasing power, the penny remains a beloved emblem of thrift, memory, and tradition. A penny saved is a penny earned. The old saying goes, and for generations, people have collected pennies in jars, coffee cans, and albums. This cultural attachment means that pennies often receive more sentimental attention than their higher denomination counterparts, and the Lincoln cent in particular has been a gateway coin for countless young collectors. The 1997D is part of this tradition, bridging the gap between sentimental familiarity and the potential for staggering monetary value. When examining the $441 million example itself, experts note that it is not only flawless but also possesses extraordinary eye appeal. This term refers to the subjective beauty of a coin, beyond its technical grade. The surfaces of the coin are described as having a radiant, even glow, with no visible marks or imperfections under magnification. The strike is deep and uniform, bringing out every detail of Lincoln's portrait and the Lincoln Memorial with almost three-dimensional clarity. In the coin's fields, the flat areas surrounding the design, light dances across a surface so smooth it resembles glass. Such qualities are not easily achieved, even with modern minting technology, and when they occur in combination with historical significance and rarity, the result is a coin that transcends its humble origins. Interestingly, the high-profile sale of the $441 million coin has had ripple effects beyond the numismatic world. Economists and investment analysts have pointed to the sale as an example of the extremes of perceived value in collectible markets. Like rare paintings or luxury watches, the worth of a coin is not dictated solely by its utility or intrinsic materials, but by its uniqueness and the stories woven around it. In this sense, the 1997D is less a piece of currency and more a work of art, an artifact whose value is determined by the interplay of scarcity, desire, and narrative. In the years following the sale, demand for certified high-grade 1997D cents has risen steadily. Auction houses report increased interest in even mid-range mint state coins from that year, as collectors hope to acquire the best example they can afford. Meanwhile, the hunt for errors continues with renewed enthusiasm. Every new discovery, whether it's a previously unknown double die or a spectacular off-center strike, adds to the year's lore and keeps it at the forefront of collectors' minds. The fact that most 1997D cents remain common and worth face value only makes the rare exceptions more alluring, as they stand out all the more sharply against the backdrop of the ordinary. These dynamics create a feedback loop. The more people hear about extraordinary 1997Ds, the more they search. The more they search, the more varieties and high-grade examples are found, and the more that are found, the greater the public's fascination with the date becomes. Even those who never find anything beyond face value often find themselves drawn deeper into the hobby, expanding their search to other years and denominations, learning the history of the mint, and developing an appreciation for the artistry of coinage. The night of the auction that would make numismatic history began with a kind of quiet tension that only those who have attended such events can truly understand. The venue was a grand hall in New York, its high ceilings echoing with the low murmur of conversation and the soft clink of glasses. Rows of polished wooden chairs were arranged before a raised podium, where the auctioneer would soon stand, his gavel poised to direct the flow of millions of dollars in bids. Around the room, some of the wealthiest coin collectors in the world took their seats, each accompanied by advisors, appraisers, and sometimes even bodyguards. The air smelled faintly of cologne, paper, and old leather, an atmosphere that was at once refined and electric. On a velvet-draped table in the center of the stage, illuminated by carefully positioned spotlights, rested the object of everyone's attention. The flawless 1997 D Lincoln Cent encased in a clear, tamper-proof holder. It seemed almost to glow from within, its copper surfaces reflecting the warm light like a miniature sun. Even from a distance, its perfection was visible. The sharp, crisp details of Lincoln's profile, the mirror-like feels, the flawless rim. It was as if time itself had stepped aside for this coin, allowing it to pass through nearly 3 decades without a single blemish. The auctioneer began the evening with several other lots. Gold coins from the 1800s, rare colonial currency, a few early American silver dollars. Prices were high, but the audience was merely warming up. It was clear that most were here for the main event, and when the moment finally came, the room fell into a near-silent stillness. The auctioneer's voice rang out, crisp and confident, as he introduced the lot. He spoke of its immaculate condition, its extraordinary provenance, and the fact that it was the highest-graded 1997 D cent ever certified. He reminded the room of its cultural significance, of how it represented a peak in modern minting, and how examples like this were not simply rare, they were singular. Then, with a sharp rap of the gavel, the bidding began. An opening bid of $10 million flashed on the large digital screen behind the podium. Without hesitation, another paddle went up, $20 million. A murmur ran through the crowd. $30 million. $40 million. The numbers climbed rapidly, the auctioneer's cadence increasing in speed as the bids came in from every corner of the room. One bidder, a tall man in an impeccably tailored navy suit, sat with an air of quiet confidence, raising his paddle with minimal movement, as though each bid was simply an afterthought. Across the room, a woman in a striking emerald green dress matched him bid for bid, her expression calm, but her eyes sharply focused on the coin. As the price soared past $100 million, the tension in the hall became almost physical. Some attendees leaned forward in their chairs, others whispered to their neighbors, but all eyes remained fixed on the two dominant bidders. At $250 million, the competition began to slow. The increments shrank, but the determination in the room was palpable. Each bid was now less about financial calculation and more about personal resolve. This was no longer a mere auction, it had become a duel, one in which pride, legacy, and the thrill of possession outweighed all else. The man in the navy suit bid $400 million. A collective gasp swept the hall. The woman in green paused, her fingers lightly tapping the paddle in her lap. The auctioneer waited, his gavel hovering in the air. Then, slowly, she raised her paddle one final time. $441 million. A stunned silence followed. The man in the navy suit considered, his jaw tightening, but after a long moment, he lowered his paddle. The gavel fell with a sharp crack that echoed through the hall. Sold! The auctioneer announced, his voice carrying a note of triumph. Applause erupted, though it was tinged with disbelief. History had been made. In that instant, the 1997 D Lincoln Cent had become not just the most valuable modern coin, but a symbol of how far the world of collectibles could push the boundaries of perceived worth. Reporters surged forward as the winning bidder approached the stage. She inspected the coin briefly, her expression unreadable, before nodding to her assistants. Later, in interviews, she would speak not of investment potential but of the coin's beauty, its place in American history, and the satisfaction of preserving it for future generations. The sale sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. Prices for high-grade Lincoln cents of all years rose almost overnight, and the 1997 D, once a humble penny minted in the billions, became a household name in collector circles. For weeks afterward, coin dealers reported an influx of people bringing in jars of pennies, hoping to find their own hidden fortune. The auction had sparked a wave of excitement that rippled far beyond the rarefied air of elite collectors, reaching ordinary people who had never before given a thought to the coins in their pockets. In the days immediately following the $441 million sale of the flawless 1997 D Lincoln Cent, news outlets across the globe raced to cover the story. Major television networks replayed footage of the moment the gavel fell, the hall erupting in applause, the emerald-clad winner calmly securing her prize. Financial journalists compared it to the sale of legendary artworks, rare diamonds, and vintage automobiles, noting how a humble penny had outshined them all. On social media, the story went viral almost instantly. Headlines blared, "Penny sells for $441 million," alongside images of a copper coin glinting under bright auction lights. People who had never thought twice about pocket change began digging through drawers, glove compartments, and long-forgotten jars, suddenly seeing every penny as a potential treasure. Pawn shops and coin dealers were inundated with customers carrying paper bags and coffee cans full of coins, their faces a mix of hope and skepticism. Some dealers smiled patiently as they explained that not every 1997 D was worth a fortune, only the most pristine, mint-condition examples with extraordinary provenance could command such sums. But the fever had already taken hold. Online marketplaces saw a surge in penny listings, many priced at absurd amounts, with sellers citing the recent record as justification. Numismatic forums buzzed with speculation about whether other dates and mint marks might follow suit. Meanwhile, in the quieter corners of the collecting world, seasoned experts reflected on what the sale truly meant. Some worried it would distort the market, luring in speculators who cared little for history or preservation. Others welcomed the attention, believing it might inspire a new generation of collectors to learn about the artistry, craftsmanship, and stories behind coins. The U.S. Mint itself took notice. Internal memos circulated discussing whether such a dramatic increase in interest could be leveraged for educational programs or special releases. Public tours of the Denver Mint saw a spike in attendance, with visitors eager to see where the famous 1997 D had been struck. Guides pointed to the massive presses and explained the journey of a coin from blank planchet to finished cent, reminding guests that even a penny could, under the right circumstances, become a piece of history. The winning bidder, now something of a celebrity in numismatic circles, gave a series of carefully chosen interviews. She explained that she had no plans to resell the coin, instead placing it in a climate-controlled private gallery where it could be studied by scholars and admired by select visitors. She spoke of her lifelong fascination with coins, recalling how, as a child, she had saved every unusual penny she found, not for their monetary value, but for their connection to the past. To her, the $441 million price was not about market speculation, but about securing a piece of American heritage. This sentiment resonated with many, shifting the conversation from the shock of the number to the deeper meaning behind collecting. Still, the economic ripples were undeniable. Auction houses began fielding calls from clients wondering if their own collections might contain the next big headline maker. Coin grading services reported record submission volumes, with packages arriving daily from every state, each containing coins wrapped in tissue, tucked into envelopes, or placed in old film canisters. The Postal Service, too, felt the impact as people mailed their finds across the country for evaluation. Television programs dedicated segments to the penny craze, inviting experts to explain what separated an ordinary cent from a rarity. Under magnified cameras, they pointed out the importance of mint luster, strike sharpness, and the absence of wear or blemishes. They demonstrated how even the smallest nick could drastically lower a coin's grade, and, consequently, its value. Yet amidst all the excitement, the 1997 D stood alone. No other modern penny approached its combination of flawless preservation, verified history, and dramatic auction theater. It remained the crown jewel, the one coin that had redefined what a modern cent could be worth. In collector circles, whispers began about when, or if, it might come to market again. Some speculated it could remain in private hands for decades, its value climbing quietly in the shadows. Others believed it might reappear in a grander, even more public setting, setting the stage for an even higher record. But for now, it was enough to know that somewhere, in a secure vault, the copper surface of that 1997 D cent continued to gleam, untouched by time, a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary treasures can be hiding in plain sight. To truly understand the magnitude of the 1997 D Lincoln cent's rise to legendary status, one must step back to the year it was struck and walk through every stage of its creation. The year 1997 marked the 88th consecutive year of the Lincoln cent series, which had first been introduced in 1909 to honor the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By that time, the coin had long since transitioned from its original wheat reverse to the familiar Lincoln Memorial reverse, a design first introduced in 1959 for Lincoln's 150th birthday. The Denver Mint, located in the heart of Colorado, played a crucial role in producing the year cents. In 1997, Denver struck well over 4 billion Lincoln cents, a staggering number that made the penny one of the most common circulating coins in the United States. Most of these were produced with blistering speed, each press striking more than 700 coins per minute. The blanks, small discs of copper-plated zinc, were fed into enormous high-speed presses where steel dies, engraved with the obverse and reverse designs, slammed together under immense pressure. The obverse featured the familiar right-facing bust of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner nearly 9 decades earlier. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stood in precise symmetry, its pillars sharp and straight, the statue of Lincoln faintly visible between them under magnification. The mint mark, D for Denver, appeared just beneath the date, a small but crucial identifier. Though billions were struck, subtle differences could arise in the minting process. The quality of the strike, the sharpness of details, and even the hue of the copper plating could vary from coin to coin. These small differences became the foundation for grading rarity and value. For the coin that would one day sell for $441 million, everything aligned perfectly. The dies were brand new, delivering a strike of extraordinary sharpness. The copper plating was flawless, with no bubbles, spots, or imperfections. It was ejected from the press without contact marks and swiftly moved through the production process without picking up even the faintest sign of wear. From a metallurgical standpoint, the 1997 D cent was composed of 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper plating, a composition the U.S. Mint had adopted in 1982 after phasing out the heavier, more expensive copper alloy cents. While many collectors favor the older, pre-1982 coins for their higher intrinsic metal content, Pristine post-1982 examples, like this one, prove that rarity and historical significance could transcend metal value. What made the $441 million specimen exceptional was not its composition, but its preservation and its journey. It somehow bypassed the wear and tear of circulation entirely, likely being pulled from a fresh mid-roll by a careful hand shortly after production. Over the years, it was stored in optimal conditions, temperature-controlled, humidity-controlled, and protected from light and air, ensuring the copper plating retained its brilliant, almost mirror-like luster. Specialists examining the coin under magnification noted that the details of Lincoln's hair and the texture of his coat were struck with microscopic precision, showing no signs of weakness. The lettering around the rim was crisp and squared, with full, sharp serifs. On the reverse, each column of the Lincoln Memorial was defined with clarity, and even the tiny statue between them seemed to possess depth and presence. For collectors, such perfection was not just a matter of beauty, it was the key to unlocking astronomical value. In numismatics, condition is king, and coins graded at the absolute top of the scale often sell for many multiples of their lower-graded counterparts. The coin in question was graded a flawless MS-70 by a leading grading service, a designation so rare for circulation strike modern since that it might as well be a once-in-a-generation event. Adding to its allure was its impeccable provenance. Documentation traced its ownership through a chain of respected collectors and dealers, each having safeguarded it with the utmost care. This unbroken history further elevated the coin's mystique, assuring buyers that it was genuine, untouched, and irreplaceable. But beyond the technical perfection, the 1997 D also carried with it the intangible magic of timing. It emerged at a moment when the numismatic market was ripe for spectacle, when collectors, investors, and the general public were all seeking the next great story. The sale price was not just a reflection of metal and minting, it was a reflection of the coin's symbolic power, its ability to unite history, artistry, and rarity into one gleaming copper disc. Today, researchers continue to examine other 1997 D cents, hunting for anything remotely close in quality. While many high-grade examples exist, none have yet matched the unblemished perfection of the record holder. This has only deepened the legend, as if the coin were not merely the product of human skill and machinery, but of chance and destiny working together in the hidden corners of the mint floor. The story of the 1997 D Lincoln cent is not just the tale of one coin, it is the culmination of nearly 9 decades of American history, artistry, and change. To understand why this small copper-plated disc holds such weight in the numismatic world, we must return to the beginning, to the year 1909, when the United States Mint made a decision that would shape the future of its smallest denomination forever. Until 1909, the 1-cent coin had featured the Indian head design, a piece of artistry beloved in its own right. But 1909 marked the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and President Theodore Roosevelt, a man passionate about elevating the beauty of American coinage, insisted that the penny should bear the image of the 16th president. This would make the Lincoln cent the first regular-issue U.S. coin to feature the portrait of a real person, breaking from the tradition of allegorical figures like Liberty. The Mint selected Victor David Brenner, a talented sculptor and engraver, to create the design. Brenner's obverse portrait captured Lincoln's dignity and quiet strength, while the reverse featured 2 simple wheat stalks framing the words, 1 cent, and United States of America, with the motto, E pluribus unum, above. These wheat cents remained in circulation for 50 years, from 1909 until 1958, and became an enduring symbol of early 20th century America. Over those decades, subtle variations emerged, different mint marks, slight changes in die engraving, and rare minting errors, giving rise to some of the most sought-after coins in the hobby, such as the 1909 SVB and the 1914 D. Then came 1959, the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, and with it a dramatic change. The reverse design was replaced with the Lincoln Memorial, created by engraver Frank Gasparo. This new design honored not just Lincoln's image, but also a physical monument dedicated to his memory. The memorial reverse was meticulously detailed, with each column and step carefully engraved, and even a tiny depiction of the seated Lincoln visible between the central columns under magnification. The Lincoln Memorial design would remain for another half-century, and it was the reverse used in 1997. In 1982, another major shift occurred, though it was less visible to the casual eye. Rising copper prices forced the mint to change the cent's composition from 95% copper to a core of 97.5% zinc with a thin plating of 2.5% copper. This change reduced the coin's weight from 3.11 grams to 2.5 grams. The new zinc-based cents looked the same as their copper predecessors, but they behaved differently. Zinc was softer and more prone to corrosion if exposed to moisture, making pristine high-grade examples harder to preserve over decades. This was the metal composition that the Denver Mint used when striking the 1997 D cents. Over the decades, the Lincoln cent had become more than just a unit of currency, it was a cultural icon. Millions of Americans grew up collecting them in blue Whitman folders, filling holes with coins from pocket change. The cent bore silent witness to the passing years, to wars, depressions, booms, and technological revolutions. By 1997, the design had become so familiar that it felt like an old friend in the hand. Yet in that familiarity lay the seed of the 1997 DS extraordinary appeal. In a sea of billions of ordinary examples, one emerged as a flawless ambassador of the series, a specimen that represented not just its year, but the entire 88-year journey of the Lincoln Cent. For collectors, the allure of the 1997 D was as much about continuity as rarity. This coin linked directly back to Brenner's original 1909 design, to the wheat cents that rattled in the pockets of soldiers in World War I, to the cents that bought candy during the Great Depression, to the coins dropped into jukeboxes in the booming 1950s. It carried the legacy of Gasparo's memorial reverse, the switch from copper to zinc, and the craftsmanship of the Denver Mint's engravers and machinists. And because coins are more than metal, because they are tiny time capsules, this particular penny became a vessel for all those years of American life. Collectors understood that they were not merely buying a coin when they bid on the 1997 D, they were buying the distilled essence of a century's worth of history. The bidding war that pushed its value into the hundreds of millions was fueled by this realization, that the coin was a physical bridge across time, linking 1909 and 1997 in a way no other object could. And so the 1997 D stands today as not just a pinnacle of numismatic perfection, but as the endpoint of a story that began with Theodore Roosevelt's vision, Victor David Brenner's artistry, and generations of Americans who carried, saved, and cherished these little copper-faced tokens. The night of the auction was one of those rare moments in numismatic history when the entire coin-collecting world seemed to hold its breath. The venue was a grand hall in New York City, lit with warm golden lights reflecting off glass display cases that housed some of the most remarkable coins ever assembled. Yet, despite the glittering rarities surrounding it, there was no question which piece was the star of the show. The 1997 D Lincoln Cent, graded a perfect mint state by the most stringent of numismatic authorities. It lay in its protective holder under a spotlight, the deep luster of its copper plating glowing as if it had been struck that morning. Collectors, investors, museum curators, and billionaires from around the world had flown in for this single event. The air was thick with anticipation, and the faint scent of polished wood and velvet. Camera crews lined the back of the room, and whispers circulated among the audience. Some speculated that the coin would surpass the 100 million mark, others dared to suggest it might set a world record, but few truly believed how far the bidding would go. The auctioneer, a man with decades of experience selling priceless artifacts, approached the podium with the gravitas of someone who knew he was about to preside over history. He gave a brief introduction, reciting the coin's pedigree, its flawless strike, the miracle of its preservation, and the long-storied legacy of the Lincoln Cent series. Then, with a measured pause, he announced the opening bid. The first paddle rose immediately, crisp and confident. The number displayed on the screen behind him was already larger than the lifetime earnings of most people in the room. Yet within seconds, 2, 3, then 4 more bidders joined in. The increments jumped by millions at a time, and the auctioneer's voice took on that rhythmic urgency that drives the adrenaline of the room higher and higher. 20 million, 50 million, 100 million. By this point, only 3 serious contenders remained. A reclusive tech magnate from Silicon Valley, a Middle Eastern royal with one of the largest private coin collections in existence, and an anonymous bidder phoning in through a representative whose calm demeanor belied the fortune being risked. The tension was palpable. At 150 million, the room began to realize they were witnessing something unprecedented. Every paddle lift felt like a thunderclap. 200 million, 250, a hush fell between each call, broken only by the auctioneer's quick cadence. The tech magnate dropped out at 270 million, folding his arms and leaning back with a faint smile, as if conceding to a force beyond reason. The royal and the phone bidder pressed on, their rivalry now as much about prestige as possession. At 300 million, the pace slowed. The auctioneer leaned forward, coaxing just one more bid. At 350 million, gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters scribbled furiously, their hands shaking. Finally, with the figure standing at an astonishing $439 million, the royal hesitated, his gaze fixed on the coin as though willing it to be his. But the phone bidder's representative lifted his paddle one final time. 441 million. The auctioneer's hammer came down with a resounding crack. Sold! The word echoed through the hall like a gunshot in a canyon, and the audience erupted in applause, cheers, and disbelief. The coin had not only broken the record for the most expensive penny ever sold, but had become one of the most valuable coins in the world, regardless of denomination. In the days that followed, the sale made global headlines. News anchors marveled at the idea that something once worth a single cent could command such an astronomical price. Economists debated the implications of ultra-rare collectibles as investment vehicles. Museums begged for temporary exhibitions. And in the numismatic community, the 1997 D Lincoln Cent was elevated to a near-mythical status. The identity of the anonymous phone bidder was eventually revealed to be a billionaire philanthropist with a passion for preserving artifacts of cultural significance. In an unexpected move, he announced that the coin would not be locked away in a vault, but would go on a traveling exhibition across major cities of the world, allowing people from all walks of life to see it up close. Crowds lined up for hours to catch a glimpse, pressing forward to gaze upon the flawless surface, the tiny D-mark, the glint of history in its metallic sheen. For many, it was the first time they had ever considered the artistry, the history, and the human connection embedded in such a small object. In the end, the story of the 1997 D. Lincoln cent was about far more than its $441 million price tag. It was about the power of history made tangible, about the way a simple penny could carry the weight of a nation's past and the dreams of its collectors. And so, as the coin continued its journey across the world, it became more than a record breaker. It became a symbol of how even the humblest things can hold immeasurable value when they are treasured, preserved, and understood. And somewhere, perhaps in the back of a drawer, in a pocket, or rattling in a jar of loose change, another ordinary coin waits for its own extraordinary story to be discovered.